or so. But joining us now to preview the game, Ravens trying to win 3 in a row, get closer to 500. He's on the Window Nation guest hotline. He's from the Baltimore Sun. Let's welcome back Brian Wacker. Brian, good morning. How you feeling?
Good morning, guys. How are you?
Good. All right. Now, we go back 3 weeks ago. If you put the word health in a sentence with the Ravens, it's like not healthy. You add a couple more letters to it. Now we're sitting here 3 days away from kickoff against the Vikings and no injuries to report. I'm knocking on for Mikey here, Brian, not to jinx them, but safe to say it's the healthiest they've been maybe all season long. And secondly, is this as stout as the roster could possibly be? Because even coming out of training camp, Isaiah likely wasn't ready to rock and roll. He's there now. Is this maybe the most talented the roster has been on top of health?
Well, first I'll start with the health part of it. We were talking about this yesterday at practice, meaning myself and a few other reporters there. We couldn't recall the last time the Ravens released an injury report with nothing on it. It was just blank space.
Yeah.
So from that standpoint, yeah, look, this is about as healthy as they've been all season. I say that with a little bit of a caveat, though, segueing to your next question. Look, is this the most talented they've been? No, I think you take Nnamdi Madubuike out of the equation. That's a huge loss that they're still trying to deal with and still trying to figure out how to replace. They really, look, they can't really replace them. We thought maybe they'd make a move on the trade deadline for defensive linemen to add another body there to help that group, or maybe even possibly an offensive lineman. Neither of those things materialized. And they ended up going with sort of, smaller, more modest moves. Of course, they'd signed Carl Lawson to the practice squad, and then they trade for Dre'Mont Jones. So that should help the pass rush. And look, Travis Jones has been healthy. Speaking of health, he's looked a lot healthier of late. Certainly looked that way in the Miami game. Of course, again, also that's a bad Miami Dolphins team. Yeah, look, I think there's reasons to be positive. And, anytime you can have all 53 guys on the roster at practice, nobody on an injury report on November 6th, you're in pretty good shape.
Brian, I think this game Sunday, it's all about the O-line. And, the way they blitz and twist and all that, I mean, that's the thing athletically that the Ravens O-line doesn't do as well.
Yeah, 100%, Vinny. Look, I wrote about this for the Baltimore Sun today. Lamar Jackson's been the best quarterback in the NFL by far against the blitz all season long. He's got the highest passer rating and has just been elite. We saw that against Miami, against their blitz. I think it was 9 of 11, 3 touchdown passes, no interceptions. This is a different animal, though. To your point, I mean, you look at this Minnesota defense, whether it's Van Ginkel and Greenard on the outside, Jonathan Allen in the middle, Hargrave, some of the other guys, they bring some of the other linebackers, Ivan Pace, Blake Cashman, et cetera. You look at what this Minnesota team did going into Detroit last week, and that was impressive because that's a very good offensive line. We saw what the Lions, of course, did to the Ravens earlier this year in week 3. So that, I think, caused a lot of concern. To your point, I mean, this is a Minnesota team that likes to bring a lot of blitzes and use, misdirection and twists and stunts and all of that sort of stuff in those A and B gaps. And, that's going to really stress the 2 weakest points of the Ravens offensive line, their 2 guards. So it'll be fascinating to see. I think having Pat Ricard back will help. Certainly Justice Hill is very good in pass protection, but and Lamar, again, has been very good against the blitz, getting the ball out quickly. But again, this is a different animal, and we saw the success Detroit had with their blitzes against the Ravens earlier this year. I think they had something like 30 pressures in that game, and really put sacked Lamar like 7 times, career high. So to me, this is a fascinating matchup between Lamar and, of course, Brian Flores, the Vikings defensive coordinator, in that blitz.
Brian, with the addition of Dre'Mont Jones, I think one of the biggest things that people don't talk about as much, how he's going to help that run game. Because Van Noy and Mike Green, they're 245 pounds, and they're not great edge setters, whereas Dre'Mont's 281 and fundamentally outstanding defensive player.
Yeah, 100% agree with that. I think he will help strengthen up some of those edge issues they've had against the run this year. You go back a couple of years ago, they had guys like Jadeveon Clowney who were very good against the run. Even Owe in the past has been okay against the run. So, they've had guys who are very good in that. At this point, to your point, look, Kyle Van Noy is 34 years old. Not even the back nine of his career. The past couple of, he's down to the past, the last couple of holes of his round, so to speak. So to use a golf analogy. So to me, I think you inject him, you add a Carl Lawson in there. I mean, that certainly helps. Look, are these moves that are going to, light this defense on fire? No, but that's really never been the Ravens' MO. They like to lean on these veteran guys and pluck them when they can, and try to manage the salary cap best they can. So I think these additions will help certainly in that respect. And don't forget, Dre'Mont Jones is also a guy who's got experience playing inside, so they can kind of move him around a little bit as well if they need some different looks or to move somebody to the inside there to kind of help Travis Jones out.
Now, Brian, my gut tells me that they're going to come after J.J. McCarthy. He got sacked 5 times last week, threw a pick.
33 sacks they've given up as a team.
Yeah, so my gut tells me come after him often and early and don't let him get comfortable.
Well, we've certainly seen how the addition of Alohi Gilman has helped Kyle Hamilton in that regard. We've seen Kyle Hamilton down in the box a whole lot more than we did the first few weeks of the season. So to your point, I think, yes, they will look to try to make J.J. McCarthy uncomfortable. I'm also fascinated to see how that plays out because this is the guy, who can beat you with his legs. He can make some plays. And to your point, especially on the edges, if he breaks contain, that could be a problem for this Ravens defense. So I'll be fascinated to see how they use Roquan Smith, Kyle Hamilton, maybe even Trenton Simpson some. And, of course, guys like, as you mentioned, Dre'Mont Jones, who is a very good run defender and should be able to help contain him. But, how does that all play out? We'll find out on Sunday.
Brian Wacker, Baltimore Sun. Brian, last thing for you. Joining us, Vinny and Haynie, brought to you by the Window Nation Guest Hotline. Nolan and I were asking, we were all three of us, so Ravens 5-5 by the Jets game Sunday before Cincinnati. Nolan and I scoffed. Hell no. No way it's going to happen. Now we're all going to be agitated if they're not 5-5 by the time the Jets get here. And they put more pressure. They better be 7-5 after that week with the Jets and Bengals. So, are the Ravens in a much better place in regard? Because Lamar said, hey, we've turned the corner, which is all very touching, but the schedule is, air quotes, easy. If they're not 5-5 by New York, where's the season go from there?
Yeah, I think you certainly would expect them to be given the schedule, but this Minnesota game is not an easy game,
right.
and I think they're going to have a whole lot of problems dealing with not just that defense, but the crowd noise and everything that goes with it. So, look, when you're 3-5, with coming off that bye, and there's just the margins, guys. This are just so slim. They just don't have room for slip ups. And you look at the back end of that schedule, games at Green Bay and at Pittsburgh, huge games, probably in difficult conditions, and they just don't have room for error. So they better be 5-5. I think. To get to the playoffs, you're looking at probably 10 wins at least 10 wins to win the division. Maybe 9 gets it done, but I really think it's probably 10 minimum. And so that's just not a whole lot of room for error these next couple of months.
Brian Wacker, Baltimore Sun. Brian, appreciate the time as always. Have fun in Minnesota. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
Always
Brian.
a pleasure.
Yep.
There's Brian Wacker. Everybody will come back. It's the whip around. What happened on the world of sports last night? We'll get into that. What happened historically? A couple of cool things took place on this date in November the 6th. Matter of fact, one of them took place 30 years ago. That's even, if it wasn't for this, we wouldn't be sitting here right now. Stick around for that.